The first thing Harper Ellis received on her 18th birthday was not a cake. It was a black carriage. It waited outside the front steps before sunrise, its wheels sunk slightly into the wet gravel, its windows covered with dark curtains, its horses breathing steam into the cold morning air. No ribbons, no flowers, no laughter from the kitchen, only iron hinges, rain on stone, and two men in black coats standing beside a folded contract. Harper saw them from the upper landing. She had woken early because some foolish part of her still remembered what birthdays were supposed to feel like. Warm bread, a candle, her mother's voice humming near the stove. A small kiss pressed to her hair before the house became too awake to be kind. But her mother had been gone for years. And in Marissa Monroe's house, kindness had become something locked away with the old family portraits. Harper stood barefoot on the cold floor, one hand pressed against the locket at her throat. It was the only thing of her mother's that Marissa had not managed to take. Downstairs, voices moved through the hall. Low. Careful. Not careful enough. She turns 18 today, Marissa said. Harper went still. Her stepmother's voice was smooth in the way polished knives were smooth. Useful because they did not look dangerous until someone bled. The man beside her asked, "The contract names Avery Monroe." A pause. Then paper shifted. Harper gripped the banister. "My daughter is not going to Blackwell Castle," Marissa said. Her daughter. Not Harper. Never Harper. Another voice lowered. "The cursed Alpha King will notice the substitution. He will receive a bride," Marissa replied. "That is what the agreement requires." He asked for Avery. He asked for obedience. Silence followed. Heavy. Almost afraid. Harper felt her pulse slow. Not race. Slow. As if her body understood before her heart did. Avery had been promised to Alpha King Rowan Blackwell 3 winters ago, before the rumors turned worse. Before people whispered that no woman who entered his northern castle returned unchanged. Before they said the curse woke beneath his skin whenever the moon rose and turned him into something even his own servants feared. Avery had cried for 2 days when the summons arrived. Marissa had held her, comforted her, promised her she would fix it. Now Harper knew how. The man with the contract spoke again. "And the girl upstairs?" Marissa did not hesitate. "She is 18 now, old enough to be useful." The words did not break Harper. That surprised her most. They simply landed in a place already hollow. Not daughter, not family, useful. For a long moment, Harper stood on the landing in her plain nightdress, fair-skinned, soft-bodied, round-cheeked, with the last warm thing her mother had ever left resting against her throat. Then she let go of the banister. Quietly, carefully. No crying. No calling out. No asking why. Some questions only gave cruel people another chance to explain that cruelty was practical. Harper turned back to her room and opened the old wardrobe. Inside hung the cream dress she had worn to her mother's memorial. It was too simple for a bride. Too plain for a sacrifice. Perfect for someone being sent away by people who wanted the carriage gone before breakfast. She dressed slowly, tied her hair back, fastened the locket beneath her collar. Then she looked once at the small mirror above the washstand. Her eyes were dry. That felt important. By the time Harper walked down the stairs, the contract had already been signed. Marissa looked up and froze. Only for a second. Avery stood behind her in a pale robe, golden hair loose over her shoulders, eyes red from tears that had finally bought her safety. Harper looked at them both. No one said happy birthday. No one needed to. The black carriage was waiting. And for the first time in her life, Harper understood that leaving this house might be the cruelest gift they had ever given her. Marissa Monroe did not pretend kindness for long. That was one mercy. By the time Harper reached the bottom step, her stepmother had already folded away the face she used for guests, priests, and visiting relatives who still believed the Monroe household was respectable. No soft eyes, no trembling apology, no hand reaching for Harper's cheek. Only a woman in a dark morning gown standing beside a signed contract, relieved that the ink had dried before conscience could become inconvenient. Avery stood behind her, wrapped in pale silk. Safe. Harper noticed that first. Not Avery's tears. Not the way her younger stepsister clutched the banister as if she were the one being dragged toward death. Only the softness of her robe. The warmth of it. The fact that someone had remembered she might be cold. Marissa's gaze moved over Harper's cream dress, then to the locket hidden beneath her collar. Her mouth tightened. "You are wearing that." Harper touched the fabric lightly where the locket rested. Yes, it is unsuitable. So is the morning. Silence. Avery inhaled sharply. Marissa's eyes narrowed, but she did not strike her. Not with witnesses waiting near the door. Marissa understood appearances too well to waste cruelty where it might cost her sympathy. Instead, she smiled. Small. Thin. This is not punishment, Harper. Harper almost believed she might laugh. Not because anything was funny. Because cruelty always sounded most obscene when it asked to be called duty. The Blackwell agreement must be honored, Marissa continued. A house survives by fulfilling obligations. Your daughter's obligation, Harper said. Avery flinched. Marissa did not. My daughter has prospects. There it was. Clean. Unhidden. Harper looked at her stepmother for one quiet second and felt something inside her step away forever. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Distance. My mother's house, Harper said softly, is buying Avery's future with mine. Marissa's face hardened. Your mother's house became mine when your father died. And me? The question came before Harper could stop it. Small. Dangerous. Marissa's answer came without hesitation. You became my responsibility. Not child. Not family. Responsibility. The words fit perfectly with the ones Harper had heard upstairs. Old enough to be useful. Responsibility. Agreement. Bride. Every name except her own. The oldest man in the black coat cleared his throat near the door. We should leave before the roads flood. Harper looked toward the open entryway. Rain swept across the gravel beyond it. The black carriage waited like an answer no one had asked her permission to refuse. Avery took one step forward. Harper. For one foolish heartbeat, Harper thought her stepsister might apologize. Might say thank you. Might admit, at least once, that she understood what was being taken. Instead, Avery whispered, Please don't make this harder. That hurt. More than Marissa. More than the contract. Because Avery wanted her sacrifice quiet enough to feel innocent. Harper looked at the girl who had once taken her ribbons, her room, her father's attention, then finally the life meant to be hers only because she was loved more. I won't, Harper said. Avery's shoulders sagged with relief. That was the moment Harper stopped feeling sorry for her. She walked to the side table near the entry hall, where Marissa had placed the Monroe family ring beside the contract. It was a small gold band with the house crest, forced onto Harper's finger the night the agreement with Blackwell had first been discussed, proof that she could be presented as family when useful. Harper pulled it off. Slowly, the band resisted over her knuckle, then slipped free. Marissa's eyes flashed. What are you doing? Harper placed the ring on the table. The sound was small. Final. If I am being sent because I am not your daughter, Harper said, then I should not wear your name like a lie. No one spoke. Even the men in black coats stood still. Avery looked down. Marissa's face went pale with anger, but Harper was already moving. Past the contract. Past the portraits. Past the stairway where she had heard herself become useful. At the door, she stopped only once. Not to look back. To pull her mother's locket from beneath her collar and hold it in her palm. It was warm. Strangely warm. Warmer than skin. For a second, the tiny silver moon engraved on its face seemed to catch light from nowhere. Harper closed her fingers around it. Then she stepped into the rain. The black carriage door opened. No one helped her inside. That was fine. Harper climbed in on her own. And when the door shut, she did not feel like a bride going to a cursed king. She felt like a girl finally leaving a house that had mistaken silence for permission. The carriage did not move at first. That was what Harper remembered later. Not the rain. Not Marissa standing beneath the doorway with dry hands and colder eyes. Not Avery watching from the upper window, pale and safe behind glass. The stillness. That small, breathless pause before the horses pulled forward, before the wheels cut through the wet gravel, before the only house Harper had ever known began to shrink behind black curtains and rain. For one foolish second, she waited for someone to call her name. Not to stop her. She was not that naive. Only to say it. Harper. Just once. Like she was a person leaving. Not a mistake being corrected. No one did. The driver clicked his tongue. The carriage lurched. And Monroe House disappeared behind her. Harper sat alone on the narrow velvet bench, hands folded over the cream fabric of her dress, her mother's locket pressed between her palms. The carriage smelled of damp leather, old wood, and iron. There were no flowers tied inside for a bride. No warm blanket. No note. No packed basket from the kitchen. Only the contract folded beside her. Marissa had placed it there at the last moment. Not gently. Not cruelly either. Carelessly. As if Harper were expected to carry the proof of her own replacement with dignity. For a long while, she did not touch it. Rain blurred the world beyond the dark window. Fields became gray smears. Stone walls slipped past. The village road curved away from everything familiar, and with each mile, the silence in the carriage changed. At first, it was shock, then distance, then something almost like relief. That frightened her more than fear would have, because she should have been terrified. Everyone was terrified of Blackwell Castle. Children whispered about the cursed Alpha King before they were old enough to understand what a curse was. Women crossed themselves when his name passed through market stalls. Men lowered their voices when speaking of the northern border, where wolves were said to howl beneath sealed towers and servants lit no candles after moonrise. Rowan Blackwell, the Alpha King no bride wanted. The monster Avery had escaped. The sentence Harper had inherited. She should have been shaking. Instead, she felt empty. No, not empty. Unclaimed. That was different. Across from her, the folded contract slid slightly as the carriage turned. Harper finally picked it up. The paper was thick. Expensive. The seal at the bottom was black wax pressed with a wolf's head and crescent moon. Blackwell. Above it, in Marissa's careful handwriting, a name had been scraped and rewritten. Avery Monroe. Harper Ellis. The ink over Harper's name was darker, newer, less elegant. A correction made in a hurry. She stared at it until the letters blurred. Not because she cried. She still had not done that. Because seeing the substitution written down made the betrayal quieter somehow. Cleaner. A transaction did not need hatred. That was the worst part. Hatred, at least, would have made her important. This was simpler. Avery was wanted. Harper was available. The carriage slowed near the first northern checkpoint. Harper heard voices outside. A guard. The envoy. A question asked too low for her to hear fully. Then the carriage door opened. Cold air swept in. The older man in the black coat looked at her from beneath the brim of his hat. His eyes moved over her face, her soft body, her plain cream dress, the locket clutched in her hand. Not judging. Measuring. You are not Avery Monroe, he said. Harper looked back at him. No, a pause. The rain struck the carriage roof in quick, silver taps. Does the Alpha King know? No, his expression did not change, but something behind his eyes tightened. Did they force you? Harper almost answered yes. Then she thought of Avery's relieved shoulders. Marissa's dry hands. The family ring left behind on the entry table. The house that had never once called her daughter unless witnesses were listening. They sent me, Harper said. The man understood the difference. Perhaps too well. He looked toward the road ahead, where the hills had begun to darken beneath low clouds. You should know something before we arrive. Harper's fingers closed tighter around the locket. What? No one enters Blackwell Castle by mistake. The words settled between them. Heavy. Strange. Almost like warning. Almost like pity. Then he shut the door. The carriage moved again. Hours passed. The land changed. Green fields gave way to black pine forest. The road narrowed. Mist gathered low between the trees, curling around the wheels like pale hands. Somewhere far off, a wolf howled. Harper's locket warmed. She looked down. The tiny silver moon on its face glowed faintly beneath her thumb. Not enough to light the carriage. Enough to make her breath stop. The howl came again. Closer this time. The horses shuddered but did not slow. Harper pressed the locket to her chest and whispered the only words she still owned. Mother, what did they send me to? No answer came. Only the road. Only the rain. Only the dark shape of Blackwell Castle rising ahead through the mist, its towers cutting into the sky like something the world had tried to bury and failed. By the time the carriage crossed the iron bridge, Harper understood one thing clearly. She had not been sent as a bride. She had been sent as the girl they could afford to lose. Blackwell Castle did not open its gates for Harper Ellis. It swallowed her. The iron bridge groaned beneath the carriage wheels, each turn carrying her farther from the world where birthdays had candles and family names meant protection. Mist clung to the stone walls. Rain ran down the black towers in thin silver lines, making the whole fortress look less built than risen from old grief. No banners moved above the gate. No servants waited with lanterns. No one smiled when the carriage stopped. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the doors opened from inside. slowly, heavily, as if the castle itself regretted allowing anyone in. The older envoy stepped down first. He did not offer Harper his hand. Not out of cruelty, she thought. Out of habit. People in this place seemed careful about touching what might be claimed by the king. Harper climbed out alone. Her shoes met wet stone. Cold went through the thin soles at once. She lifted her eyes. Blackwell Castle rose above her, all narrow windows, iron balconies, and towers sealed with silver bars. Along the northern wall, one tower stood apart from the rest. Taller, darker. No lights burned inside it, though the sky had already begun to sink toward evening. Harper knew without being told. That was where they kept the curse. A woman in gray servant wool waited at the bottom of the steps. Her hair was pinned tightly. Her face held the careful blankness of someone who had survived by never being surprised. "Miss Ellis," she said. Not bride. Not Luna. Not guest. Harper almost appreciated the honesty. "Yes. I am Clara Vale. I oversee the inner household." The woman's eyes moved quickly over Harper's cream dress, her damp hair, the locket at her throat. "You were expected earlier. I was not told there was a schedule for being sacrificed." The envoy went still. Clara looked at her for one quiet second. Then, strangely, her mouth softened. "Only a little." "No," she said. "There rarely is." That was the first kind sentence Harper had heard all day. It nearly hurt. Clara turned and led her inside. The entrance hall was enormous and almost empty. Dark stone floors, black wood beams. Candles burned low in iron sconces, their flames small and blue at the edges. Servants moved through the shadows without sound. When Harper passed, they looked at her once, then away. Not in contempt. In warning. As if eye contact might make her fate more real. A door slammed somewhere deep inside the castle. Every servant froze. Harper did too. The sound was followed by a low vibration through the walls. Not thunder. Not machinery. A growl. Slow. Painful. Alive. The locket against Harper's chest warmed again. Clara noticed her hand move toward it. Her expression changed too quickly to read. "You will stay in the East Chamber tonight," Clara said. Harper looked toward the northern tower. "Not with the Alpha King." The hall went silent. Even the candles seemed to listen. Clara's voice dropped. "No one stays with His Majesty after moonrise." "Why?" No one answered. At the far end of the hall, an old man stepped out from beneath an archway. White hair, dark robes, a cane carved with a wolf's head. His eyes were sharp enough to make age look like a disguise. Elder Thomas Hale. Harper knew his name from the contract. He looked at her as if he had expected Avery Monroe and found a question instead. "You are not the promised daughter," he said. Harper held his gaze. "No, did they send you willingly?" "They sent me quietly." Something flickered across his face. Not pity. Recognition. Before he could speak, another sound came from the northern tower. Metal against stone. Then a roar so deep the floor trembled beneath Harper's feet. Several servants stepped back. Clara closed her eyes. Elder Hale turned toward the tower with a grief too old to hide. Harper did not move. Because beneath the roar, beneath the power, beneath everything meant to frighten her away, she heard something else. A broken breath. A man in pain. Her fingers tightened around the warm locket. Elder Hale looked back at her. "Whatever you hear tonight, Miss Ellis, do not open any northern door." Harper should have nodded. Should have promised. Should have been grateful for a room with walls between herself and the cursed king. Instead, she looked toward the dark tower again. And understood, with a quietness that frightened her more than the roar had, that Blackwell Castle was not only afraid of Alpha King Rowan. It was abandoning him. Alpha King Rowan Blackwell came to the hall before the moon did. That was the first thing Harper noticed. Not his height. Not the black coat fastened across broad shoulders. Not the silver at his throat or the dark hair damp from rain. Pushed back as if someone had tried to make a king out of a man the world kept calling a curse. It was the timing. Every servant in Blackwell Castle had moved as if night itself were a warning. Doors checked. Candles lowered. Silver locks counted twice. Yet Rowan appeared before the last light vanished, walking down the eastern stair with no escort, no announcement, and no softness anywhere on his face. The entrance hall changed around him. Instantly, servants lowered their eyes. Clara stepped back. Elder Thomas Hale straightened, one hand tightening over his wolf-headed cane. Harper did not bow fast enough. Not because she meant disrespect. Because for one breath, she forgot she was supposed to be afraid. Rowan Blackwell looked nothing like the stories had made him. Stories needed monsters to be simple. This man was not simple. He was tall and powerful, yes. Dangerous, yes. His pale skin looked almost colorless beneath the blue candlelight, and his gray-blue eyes held the kind of cold that did not come from cruelty alone. It came from endurance, from years of being watched for signs of becoming something no one wanted to stand near. His gaze moved over the hall, then stopped on Harper. Not her dress, not her soft body, not the cream fabric still damp at the hem. Her face, then the locket at her throat. The air thinned. "You are not Avery Monroe," he said. His voice was low, controlled, worse than anger. Harper folded her hands in front of her. No, Clara drew in a small breath. Elder Hale closed his eyes for half a second. Rowan's gaze sharpened. Did Monroe House think I would not notice? They hoped you would not care. Silence. The answer had left her before fear could stop it. For a moment, no one moved. Then something almost like amusement touched Rowan's mouth. It did not stay. "No," he said. "They hoped I was desperate." Harper had no answer for that. Because maybe they had. Maybe Marissa had looked at the cursed king's loneliness and seen only a place to throw away the daughter she did not want. Rowan stepped closer. The servants behind Harper went still. Every foot of distance he crossed seemed to pull the room tighter. Harper felt the warning in the way Clara's hand twitched, in the way Elder Hale shifted his weight, ready to interfere and knowing he could not. Rowan stopped several steps away, close enough for Harper to see the dark shadows beneath his eyes, close enough to see that one of his cuffs was stained where blood had dried and been poorly hidden. "You were sent in her place," he said. "Yes." "Why?" Harper looked at him for one long second, then answered with the truth, because lying to a man who had already been handed one lie felt exhausting. Because Avery was loved. The hall went silent. Not shocked. Wounded. Even Rowan's expression changed. Barely. But enough. Harper looked down before she could regret saying it. "And I was available." The words settled between them like something placed on a grave. Rowan did not speak immediately. When he did, his voice had lost its edge. Only slightly. "They sent me the daughter they could afford to lose." Harper lifted her eyes. That should have hurt. It did. But not as much as the fact that he had understood. "Yes," she said. A low sound moved through the hall. Not from the servants. Not from Elder Hale. From somewhere above. The northern tower. Metal scraped against stone. Rowan's jaw tightened. The change in him was immediate. His shoulders went rigid. His fingers curled once at his side. A shadow crossed his eyes, gold flickering beneath the gray for less than a heartbeat. Every servant stepped back. Harper did not. Rowan noticed. "Do not mistake this place for mercy," he said. "I have not. Do not mistake me for safety. I have not done that either." His gaze dropped again to the locket at her throat. "Then why are you still standing there?" Harper's fingers closed around the silver moon. Because she had nowhere else to go. Because the carriage was already gone. Because the house behind her had never been home. Because beneath the roar in the tower, she had heard pain. She said none of that. Instead, she answered quietly. "Because no one has told me where to stand." Something in Rowan's face went still. Not anger. Recognition. As if he knew exactly what it meant to be placed somewhere by other people and expected to call it duty. Elder Hale stepped forward. "Your Majesty, the moon is rising." Rowan did not look away from Harper. For a second, the gold in his eyes returned. This time, it stayed longer. Harper felt her locket grow warm enough to sting. Rowan saw her flinch. His expression closed instantly. "Take her to the east chamber," he ordered. Clara moved at once. But before Harper could turn, Rowan spoke again. "And lock the northern doors." The words were meant for everyone. The warning, somehow, was meant for her. Harper looked toward the dark tower. Another roar broke through the stone. This one lower. Rougher. Less like rage than a man trying not to beg. Rowan turned away first. He walked toward the northern passage alone, every servant shrinking from his path. Harper watched him go, and in the space between one heartbeat and the next, she understood the cruelest thing about Blackwell Castle. They had not locked the monster away to protect themselves from him. They had locked the man away so they would not have to watch him suffer. The east chamber was too beautiful to feel safe. That was Harper's first thought after Clara left her there. The room had been prepared with care. A low fire burned behind a black iron screen. Fresh water waited in a silver basin. A folded nightdress lay across the foot of the bed, soft white cotton with tiny pearl buttons at the throat. Someone had placed a tray near the window with bread, sliced apples, and a cup of warm tea already cooling beside it. It should have felt like welcome. It did not. Welcome did not come with 3 locks on the door. Harper stood in the center of the chamber, still wearing her damp cream dress, and listened as Clara turned each key from the outside. 1, 2, 3. The sound settled into her chest. Not protection. Containment. Clara paused beyond the door. Miss Ellis. Harper looked toward the wood. Yes. Whatever you hear tonight, Clara said quietly. Do not answer it. Harper's fingers closed around her mother's locket. Does he call for help? Silence. Too long. Then Clara said, not in words. Her footsteps faded down the corridor. Harper remained still until the last sound disappeared. Then the castle changed. Slowly at first. A draft moved under the door though the windows were shut. The fire bent sideways, blue at the edges. Somewhere far above, iron scraped against stone. Then came the first roar. It moved through the walls like a living thing. The tea trembled in its cup. The window glass shivered. Harper did not. That surprised her most. She should have hidden beneath the blankets. Should have pressed her hands over her ears. Should have remembered every village story about Rowan Blackwell tearing through chains beneath the moon. Instead, she stood there and listened. Because beneath the roar was the sound she had heard in the hall. Pain. Raw. Contained. Ashamed. Another crash followed. Then a voice. Rowan's voice. Not clear enough for words. Clear enough for suffering. Harper turned toward the northern wall. The locket against her throat grew hot. Not warm now. Hot. She pulled it free from beneath her collar and stared down at the silver moon engraved on its face. Light pulsed beneath her thumb, faint and steady, like a heartbeat answering something too far away to see. No, she whispered. Not to the locket. To herself. Because she already knew what she was about to do. The sensible part of her remembered Elder Hale's warning. Clara's pale face. The locked northern doors. Rowan's own command. Do not mistake me for safety. She had not. But being unsafe did not make him undeserving of help. Harper crossed to the door and tried the handle. Locked. Of course. She looked around the chamber. There had to be another way. Old castles always had servant passages, hidden doors, maintenance corridors, ways for quiet people to move unseen while powerful people pretended rooms cleaned themselves. She found it behind the tapestry, a narrow seam in the wall, almost invisible unless someone had spent childhood hiding from footsteps and learning where houses breathed. Harper pressed along the stone until something clicked. The panel opened into darkness. Another roar shook the room. This one broke at the end, not like a beast, like a man biting back a scream. Harper took the candle from beside the bed and stepped into the passage. The air inside was cold enough to sting. Dust clung to the walls. The corridors sloped downward, then turned sharply north. Twice she nearly lost her footing. Once she heard servants running somewhere beyond the stone, locking doors, whispering prayers, moving away from the tower. Harper moved toward it. The locket lit the passage better than the candle. That frightened her. She kept going anyway. At the base of the northern stair, she found the first locked door. Then the second. Then the third. The keys hung on a hook beside the final archway. Too easy. No, not easy. Expected. As if everyone knew the locks were not meant to keep determined people out. They were meant to let frightened people say they had tried. Harper took the keys. Her hands shook only once. The final door opened into the tower chamber. Moonlight fell through the barred windows in pale, brutal lines. And there, chained to the center of the stone floor, was Alpha King Rowan Blackwell. Half man, half wolf, all pain. Silver cuffs circled his wrists, burning into skin that shifted beneath shadow and fur. His black shirt was torn across one shoulder. Blood marked the floor around him in dark arcs where he had fought the chains. His eyes opened when Harper stepped inside. Gold. Feral. Furious. Terrified. Leave, he rasped. The word barely sounded human. Harper should have obeyed. Instead, she stepped closer. Rowan pulled against the chains, and the silver hissed against him. Leave. This time, it was not a warning. It was a plea wearing the only voice he still trusted. Harper's throat tightened. She looked at the blood. The chains. The king everyone feared. Then she said the one thing no one in Blackwell Castle had said all night. No one should be left alone like this. Rowan Blackwell stared at her as if she had spoken in a language the curse did not know how to destroy. No one should be left alone like this. The words did not echo. They sank. Into the stone floor. Into the silver chains. Into the terrible space between the cursed Alpha King and the girl who had been sent to him because another daughter was loved more. For one moment, Rowan did not move. Then his face twisted. Not in anger. In pain. "Do not make this noble," he rasped. Harper stopped several steps inside the tower chamber, candle shaking in one hand, locket burning against her palm in the other. Moonlight cut across the floor in pale bars, touching the blood near Rowan's knees, the silver cuffs around his wrists, the claw marks carved deep into the black stone. "I am not. You came here because you do not understand what I am. I heard you." His eyes flashed gold. "Then you heard enough to leave." "No," Harper said softly. "I heard enough to know everyone else already had." The words landed too close. Rowan snarled. The sound should have frightened her backward. It did not. Not because she was brave. Bravery felt too clean for this. Harper was afraid. She could feel it in her throat, in the cold sweat beneath her collar, in the way her knees wanted to remember every warning she had been given since the carriage crossed the bridge. But fear was not the only thing in the room. There was shame. His. There was loneliness. His. There was the strange, steady warmth of her mother's locket pulsing in her hand, as if it recognized the moonlight spilling over his broken chains. Rowan pulled hard against the cuffs. The silver burned brighter. He sucked in a breath through his teeth, and Harper saw the muscles in his shoulders lock as he forced himself not to cry out. That restraint hurt worse to watch than the blood. "Stop," she whispered. His head snapped up. "Do not command me." "I am not commanding you." "Then what are you doing?" Harper looked at the chains, then at him. "I don't know yet." A bitter laugh tore from him. It ended halfway into a growl. "The girl they sent instead has no plan. No weapon. No sense." Harper almost smiled. Not happily. Not safely. Only because there was something painfully human in the insult. "I brought a candle," she said. Rowan went still. For one impossible second, the monster in the tower looked at her as if he had forgotten what to do with gentleness. Then his expression hardened again. "You should fear me." "I do." His jaw tightened. Harper stepped closer. Only one step. His whole body tensed. The chains scraped loudly across the floor. "Do not." She stopped. Not because of the threat. Because of the plea underneath it. Rowan's breathing had changed. Rough. Uneven. Every inhale seemed to drag the curse deeper through him. Black veins of shadow moved beneath the skin at his throat, vanishing and returning with each pulse of moonlight. The stories had called him cursed. They had not said the curse looked like suffering trying to wear a body. Harper swallowed. "Does it always hurt this much?" His eyes narrowed. "Why do you care?" The question came too fast. Too sharp. As if he needed the answer to be foolish so he could throw it away. Harper thought of Marissa's dry hands. Avery's relieved shoulders. The contract beside her in the carriage. Useful. Available. Sent instead. "I know what it feels like," she said slowly. "To be put somewhere painful and told the pain is your purpose." Silence. This time, Rowan was the one who looked away. The movement was small, but in a man chained beneath moonlight, it felt like surrender. Harper moved again. The locket flared hot in her palm. Rowan's head turned sharply toward it. His nostrils flared. His golden eyes fixed on the silver moon engraved across its face. "What is that?" "My mother's." His voice dropped. "Hide it." Harper frowned. "Why?" "Because the curse sees light as a challenge." The chamber trembled. The shadows along Rowan's neck deepened. His claws dug into the stone. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, barely human. "Harper." It was the first time he had said her name. Not Miss Ellis. Not substitute. Not the daughter they could afford to lose. "Harper." Her chest tightened. "Leave now." The shadows rose behind him like black smoke. The candle went out. Darkness swallowed the tower. Only the locket remained glowing in Harper's hand. Rowan bowed forward with a sound that broke against the chains, and when he lifted his face again, the gold in his eyes was almost gone beneath something older. Wilder. Hungrier. The curse had found her. Harper should have run. Instead, she set the dead candle down, closed her fingers around the locket, and stepped fully into the moonlight. "No," she said again. And this time, the word was not refusal. It was a promise. The curse moved before Rowan did. It rose from the stone in thin black threads, sliding through the moonlight like smoke learning the shape of claws. The air turned colder. The barred windows rattled once, then stilled. Somewhere beyond the tower door, the castle seemed to hold its breath. Rowan's chains tightened, not by anyone's hand, by the curse itself. Silver bit deeper into his wrists, and his body arched against the floor with a sound he could not fully swallow. Harper stepped forward. Rowan's head snapped up. "Do not touch me." His voice was broken now. Not weak, never weak, but torn between command and desperation. Harper stopped just outside the ring of moonlight surrounding him. Her locket burned against her palm, silver light leaking between her fingers. Every story she had ever heard about the cursed Alpha King screamed through her mind. He would kill her. The curse would consume her. No bride survived the tower. No woman should stand close enough to see what he became beneath the moon. But stories were made by people who left before the truth had finished happening. Harper looked at the silver cuffs, at the blood-dark marks beneath them, at the way Rowan kept his claws curled into his own palms, as if hurting himself was safer than reaching for her. That was not a monster. That was restraint wearing a nightmare. "You are bleeding," she said. Rowan laughed once. It sounded almost like pain. "That is what concerns you." "Yes." His eyes flickered. For one strange moment, the gold softened. Then the shadows surged up his throat again, and he snarled, twisting away from her as if distance could protect her from what lived inside him. "The curse burns anything that tries to free me." Harper looked at the locket. The silver moon on its face had opened. Not literally, not like a lock, like a memory. Light spread from it, faint and pale, touching the skin of her wrist. A mark appeared there, thin as thread, curving beneath her pulse in the shape of a crescent. Harper stared. She should have been afraid of that too. Instead, she felt something settle. Not certainty, recognition. "My mother knew," she whispered. Rowan went still. "What?" Harper did not answer, because she did not know enough to explain. She only knew Marissa had hated the locket, hated it more than an old piece of silver deserved, hated that Harper wore it against her heart where no one else could claim it. The curse moved again, this time toward Harper. Rowan lunged against the chains, trying to place his body between her and the darkness even though he was the one bound inside it. "Run." Harper shook her head. Then she stepped into the moonlight. The black threads struck her hand first. They should have burned. Rowan's face changed before she felt anything. Horror, then disbelief, then something so fragile she almost looked away. Because the curse did not burn her. It recoiled. Not far, not fully, but enough. Harper reached for the silver cuff around his right wrist. "Harper," he said. Her name again. This time, not warning, begging. She touched the chain. The tower went silent. No roar, no wind, no rattling iron. Only Harper's breath and Rowan's, caught between them in the white line of moonlight. The silver was hot beneath her fingers. Not enough to wound. Enough to remember every hand it had ever punished. The crescent mark on Harper's wrist flared. Light slipped from her skin into the cuff. Rowan inhaled sharply. His claws retracted. The shadows beneath his throat broke apart like ink dropped into water. Harper tightened her grip. The cuff opened. Not with a snap. With a sigh. As if it had been waiting years for the right hand to tell it to let go. Rowan stared at his freed wrist. So did Harper. Neither of them moved. Then the northern tower door burst open behind her. Clara stood there with a lantern lifted high. Elder Thomas Hale stood beside her, pale as bone, his cane forgotten in one hand. Behind them, servants crowded the stairwell, silent and terrified. No one looked at Rowan first. They looked at Harper, at her hand on the broken cuff, at the silver crescent burning around her wrist, at the cursed king kneeling in the moonlight, breathing without pain for the first time anyone could remember. Elder Hale whispered one word. Not loudly, not for the room, for the past. "Moonblood." Harper turned toward him. Rowan did too. The curse hissed once in the corners of the tower, wounded but not gone. Elder Hale's eyes dropped to the locket at Harper's throat. "Who was your mother?" The question landed harder than the roar had. Harper's fingers closed around the locket. Before she could answer, Rowan moved. Slowly, carefully, he placed his freed hand over the chain still locked around his other wrist, but his eyes stayed on Harper. "You should have burned," he said. His voice was low, unsteady, almost human again. Harper looked at the open cuff beneath her hand. then at the servants who watched her as if the girl sent instead had become something the castle did not know how to name. "I know," she whispered. Rowan's gaze lifted to hers. For the first time, he did not look at her like a substitute, or a bride, or a lie sent by cowards. He looked at her like the curse had just answered a question he had been too broken to ask. And somewhere deep beneath Blackwell Castle, something old woke up. By morning, Blackwell Castle had learned to whisper differently. Not about the curse, not about the locked tower, about Harper Ellis, the girl sent instead. The girl who had walked into the northern chamber when every trained guard and silver-blessed servant had spent years walking away from it. The girl who had touched the cursed Alpha King and lived. Harper woke in the east chamber with sunlight pale across her face and her mother's locket warm against her throat. For a moment, she did not remember where she was. Then pain returned in pieces. The black carriage. Marissa's voice. Old enough to be useful. Rowan chained beneath moonlight. The silver cuff opening beneath her hand. Moonblood. Harper sat up too quickly. The room tilted. A soft knock came at the door before it opened. Clara Vale entered carrying a tray, but she stopped just inside the room and looked at Harper with something entirely new. Not pity, not fear, reverence. Harper disliked it immediately. "Please don't," she said. Clara blinked. "Miss Ellis. Look at me like that." Silence. Then Clara lowered her eyes, not in obedience this time, but apology. "I'm sorry. That was worse somehow." Harper looked toward the window. Morning had made the castle almost beautiful. Almost. Mist lifted from the courtyard. Black stone glistened with rain. Somewhere below, servants moved through the halls with careful urgency. "Where is he?" Harper asked. Clara did not need to ask who. In the old council room with Elder Hale. Harper's hand went to her wrist. The crescent mark was still there. Faint now. Silver beneath the skin like a secret refusing to fade. Clara noticed. "Does it hurt?" No, that was not entirely true. It did not burn. It ached. Not on her skin. Deeper. As if something inside her had been called by name and had not yet decided whether to answer. Before Clara could speak again, the door opened wider. Elder Thomas Hale stood outside. He looked older than he had the night before. That frightened Harper more than his severity had. "Miss Ellis," he said, "His Majesty requests your presence." Harper almost laughed. Requests. Yesterday, she had been delivered like a replacement bride. Today, a cursed king was requesting her. The world had strange manners when it wanted something. She stood slowly. "Does he need me?" Elder Hale's gaze moved to her locket. "Yes," he said, "but that is not why he asked." The old council room overlooked the northern courtyard. Its walls were lined with faded maps, old battle records, and portraits of Blackwell kings who all seemed to have mistaken grimness for wisdom. Rowan stood near the window, unchained. That was the first thing Harper saw. His right wrist was wrapped in clean linen where the cuff had opened. His left wrist still bore a silver restraint, though it hung loose now, covered by black cloth as if the castle could hide what it had done to him by dressing it politely. He turned when she entered. The room changed. Not because he was Alpha King, because he looked at her like she was the only real thing in it. Harper stopped just inside the door. Rowan's gaze dropped to her wrist, then lifted again. "You should not have come to the tower," he said. Harper folded her hands. "Good morning to you too." Elder Hale coughed once into his fist. Rowan stared at her. Then, impossibly, something near his mouth softened. Only for a second. It disappeared before it could become a smile. "You could have died. So everyone keeps implying. The curse has killed people for less." "I'm sorry." His expression tightened. "For what?" "That I disappointed it." Silence. Clara looked down quickly. Elder Hale turned slightly toward the maps, as if suddenly fascinated by geography. Rowan did not laugh, but the air around him changed. A little less cold. A little less alone. Then Elder Hale placed Harper's contract on the table. The morning gentleness died. Harper recognized Marissa's ink at once. Avery Monroe scraped away. Harper Ellis written darker above it. Rowan looked at the paper as if it were a living thing he wanted to crush. "They knew," Elder Hale said quietly. Harper went still. Rowan's voice dropped. "Explain." Elder Hale touched the black wax seal. "Monroe House did not send Miss Ellis because she was worthless. They sent her because her mother was Evelyn Ellis." Harper's breath caught. No one had said her mother's full name in years. Elder Hale looked at her with grief now. Evelyn was of the Moon Healer line. Rare. Hidden. hunted in some territories. A true moon blood can soothe wolf curses, break silver bindings, and awaken old vows. Harper's fingers closed around her locket. Marissa knew? Yes. The answer landed harder than any carriage wheel over gravel. Not worthless. Not accidental. Hidden. Buried. Used. Rowan's hand closed around the edge of the table until the wood cracked softly beneath his grip. Harper did not move, because the truth did not free her all at once. It only changed the shape of the cage. She sent me because she was afraid of what I was, Harper said. Elder Hale lowered his eyes. And because she thought the curse would either consume you or bind you here before you understood your own value. A cold clarity settled inside Harper. There it was. The final betrayal. Marissa had not thrown away an unwanted girl. She had tried to bury the one person she could not afford to let become powerful. Rowan stepped toward her. Slowly. Carefully. He stopped before entering her space. She was wrong, he said. Harper looked up at him. His voice was quiet, but something dangerous lived beneath it. They all were. For the first time since the carriage, Harper felt her eyes burn. Not with tears. Not yet. With anger waking late. Rowan looked toward the contract. Then back at her. You were not sent to me as a bride, he said. You were sent here as a grave. The words should have frightened her. Instead, they steadied her. Harper touched the locket at her throat, feeling the moon's sigil warm beneath her fingers. Then I suppose, she said softly, they should have made sure I stayed buried. Outside the window, somewhere beneath Blackwell Castle, a low sound moved through the stone. Not a roar. Not pain. An answer. The answer beneath Blackwell Castle did not come again. That made it worse. A roar would have been easier to fear. A crash, easier to name. But the low sound that moved through the stone felt older than the curse, older than Rowan's chains, older than every locked door that had taught the castle how to pretend pain could be managed by distance. Harper felt it in her bones. So did Rowan. His head turned slightly toward the floor, eyes narrowing with a focus that made the room colder. Elder Hale went pale. Clara whispered, "What was that?" No one answered quickly. Then Rowan said, "The lower vault." Elder Hale closed his eyes. That silence told Harper enough. The castle had more secrets. Of course it did. Places like Blackwell did not survive on stone alone. They survived on things buried where no one polite had to look at them. Harper looked at Rowan. Is it part of the curse? His jaw tightened. Everything here is part of the curse. That was not an answer. It was a confession dressed as one. Elder Hale stepped forward. Your Majesty, she has already done enough for one night. The mark has barely settled. If the vault has awakened because of her bloodline, then taking her near it before we understand. No, Harper said. Both men looked at her. She felt the weight of it immediately. Their concern, their caution, their instinct to place her somewhere safe while they decided what her life meant. It was softer than Marissa's cruelty. That did not make it harmless. Harper folded her hands before they could tremble. Do not speak about me as if I am not standing here. Elder Hale lowered his gaze at once. Forgive me. Rowan did not answer. He looked at her for one long moment, and Harper saw the struggle pass across his face. Not pride, not anger, restraint. The difficult kind. The kind that wanted to protect and knew protection could become another cage if it did not ask permission first. When he spoke, his voice was quieter. The lower vault was sealed before I took the throne. Why? Because my father believed the curse was a weapon. The room went still. Harper's fingers closed around the locket. Rowan looked toward the window, where the northern courtyard lay under pale morning. He thought if Blackwell blood could survive pain, it could command fear. He allowed healers, priests, witches, and council scholars to cut pieces from the curse and study them like tools. Harper felt cold move through her. And you? I was 17. The number landed strangely. 18 had made Harper useful. 17 had made Rowan a prison for his father's ambition. His voice stayed controlled. That made it hurt more. When the curse began answering only to my wolf, they locked it beneath the castle and locked me above it. Harper looked at his still-bound left wrist. The cloth hiding silver. The clean linen trying to make torment look orderly. Did anyone try to help you? Rowan's mouth moved slightly. Not a smile. Not even bitterness. Something emptier. Many tried to use me. That is not the same thing. Silence. Harper understood that too well. A knock came at the council room door. Hard. Urgent. Clara opened it before Rowan commanded her. A young guard stood outside, soaked from the rain, mud on his boots, breath uneven from running. "Your Majesty," he said, "a carriage has arrived at the outer gate." Rowan's expression closed. "From where?" The guard hesitated. Harper knew before he answered. "Monroe House." Her body went still. Clara turned toward her. Elder Hale cursed softly under his breath. Rowan did not move, but something dangerous entered the room so completely that even the candle flames shrank. "Who is inside?" he asked. "Marissa Monroe," the guard said. "And Avery Monroe." The name did not hurt the way Harper expected. It only clarified. Of course they had come. Not when she was sent away. Not when the carriage took her into rain. Not when they believed she might die before morning. They came after the castle started whispering her value. The guard swallowed. "Lady Monroe says there has been a terrible misunderstanding. She claims Miss Harper Ellis was sent by mistake." Harper laughed once. Softly, without humor. Everyone looked at her. She pressed her fingers against the locket until the crescent edge bit into her palm. "A mistake," she said. The words sounded smaller than the betrayal it was meant to cover. Rowan stepped toward the door. Harper moved first. Only one step. Enough to stop him. He looked down at her. His eyes were gray again, but something gold waited beneath them, close to the surface. "I will handle them," he said. No, the answer surprised them both. Harper's voice did not rise. It did not need to. "They sent me here because they thought I would disappear inside your curse. If you face them for me, they will say I hid behind a king." Rowan's jaw tightened. "You do not owe them courage." "No," Harper said. "I owe myself the truth." Silence. Elder Hale looked at her with something that was not reverence now. Respect. That felt easier to bear. Rowan stepped back from the door. "Not far, but enough. Then I will stand beside you." Harper looked at him. "Not in front of me." His expression changed. Only slightly. Then he bowed his head once. "Beside you." A small thing. A dangerous thing. A choice that did not look like a chain. Harper turned toward the hall, cream dress wrinkled from the night before, locket glowing faintly at her throat, silver crescent hidden beneath her sleeve. Downstairs, the family that had sent her as a substitute waited to reclaim the girl they had failed to bury. And for the first time, Harper was not walking toward them as someone useful. She was walking toward them as someone they should have feared to lose. Marissa Monroe arrived at Blackwell Castle dressed for grief she had not earned. That was the first thing Harper noticed. Her stepmother stepped from the carriage in dark blue velvet, one gloved hand pressed lightly to her chest, her face arranged into careful distress. Avery followed behind her in pale rose silk, eyes wide, lips trembling just enough to appear innocent beneath the eyes of strangers. They had dressed as a grieving family, not a guilty one. The entrance hall of Blackwell Castle waited in silence. Servants lined the walls. Clara stood near the lower stairs. Elder Hale remained beside the council arch, his cane resting against one hand. At the center of the hall stood Harper Ellis, still wearing yesterday's cream dress, wrinkled at the hem, her mother's locket warm beneath her collar. Rowan Blackwell stood beside her, not in front, beside. Marissa saw that immediately. Her eyes moved from Harper to Rowan, then back again, measuring the space between them like a woman discovering the knife she had thrown away had returned sharpened. "Harper," she breathed. Soft. Broken. False. Harper did not answer. Marissa stepped forward. "My poor girl. We have been terrified." The hall went colder. Harper looked at her stepmother's dry gloves. No mud. No rain. No tremor. Only performance polished enough to survive witnesses. Terrified of what? Harper asked quietly. That I died, or that I didn't? Avery flinched. Marissa's expression tightened for less than a heartbeat before sorrow returned. "You are confused. The journey must have frightened you." The journey was the honest part. Silence. Rowan did not move. Harper felt him beside her, still as black stone, dangerous in the quiet way that made every servant afraid to breathe too loudly. But he kept his promise. He did not speak for her. Marissa looked toward him with a trembling bow. "Your Majesty, I must apologize for this dreadful mistake. My stepdaughter was sent in error. The contract was meant for Avery. Harper was never intended to burden your house." Burden. There it was again. A softer word than useful. A prettier cage. Harper's fingers curled once at her side. Rowan's gaze sharpened, but he remained silent. Elder Hale placed the contract on the long table near the hall. The scraped name faced upward. Avery Monroe. Harper Ellis. Dark ink over old lies. Marissa saw it. Her mouth went pale. Harper stepped toward the table. You changed the name. For protection, Marissa said quickly. Avery was ill. The timing was impossible. I thought sending you temporarily would satisfy the summons until we could explain. Temporarily? Avery whispered. Harper, please. Harper looked at her. That voice had begged her not to make things harder yesterday. Now it begged her not to make truth expensive. No, Harper said. One word. Avery went silent. Harper turned back to Marissa. You did not send me temporarily. You sent me because you thought the curse would take me before anyone questioned the ink. Marissa's face hardened. Only slightly. Enough. You always were dramatic. The words fell into the hall like dust from an old curtain. Familiar. Small. Ugly. For the first time, they did not fit around Harper. She touched the locket at her throat and drew it out where everyone could see. The silver moon caught the blue candlelight and answered with a faint glow. Marissa stepped back. There. Fear. Real this time. Rowan saw it. So did Elder Hale. Harper held the locket gently. You knew what my mother was. Marissa said nothing. Avery looked between them, confused. Mother. Harper did not look away from Marissa. You knew why she hid this. You knew why she told me never to let you take it. Marissa's mask cracked. You know nothing about your mother. I know she was Evelyn Ellis. The name moved through the hall softly. Elder Hale bowed his head. Marissa's eyes flashed. She was weak. Rowan moved. Only half a step. Harper lifted one hand, and he stopped. That small obedience changed the room more than any roar could have. Marissa stared at it. At Harper's raised hand. At Rowan's restraint. At the power she had tried to bury now standing beside the cursed Alpha King as if she belonged there more than the daughter Marissa had saved. Harper's voice stayed calm. No. She was hidden. There is a difference. A low sound moved beneath the floor again. The lower vault. The castle answering. Avery grabbed Marissa's sleeve. Mother, what is she? Marissa did not answer. So Rowan finally did. His voice was quiet. Deadly. She is the woman your house sent here to die. Avery's eyes filled with horror. Marissa turned sharply toward him. Your Majesty, surely you would prefer the daughter promised to you. Avery is trained, suitable, untouched by scandal. Harper is enough. Rowan did not shout. The word struck the walls anyway. Marissa froze. Rowan's eyes had gone gold at the edges. You do not offer me another woman like a replacement cup because the first one did not shatter. The hall went silent. Harper felt the words settle inside her. Not rescue. Witness. There was a difference. Marissa looked at Harper one last time, and the false grief vanished completely. You ungrateful girl, she whispered. I gave you shelter. Harper looked at the black carriage waiting beyond the open doors. Then back at the woman who had mistaken a roof for love. No, she said softly. You gave me a place to be useful until you found a better use. Marissa had no answer. Not one the room would believe. Harper stepped closer to the table and placed her hand over the contract. The silver crescent on her wrist glowed through her sleeve. The black wax seal cracked. Everyone heard it. Small. Final. For the first time, Marissa Monroe looked at Harper Ellis and saw not the girl she had sent away, but the one who had returned with the curse listening. The black wax seal split beneath Harper's palm. Not shattered. Split. A single clean line opened through the wolf's head and crescent moon, cutting the contract in half without tearing the paper. The sound was small enough that it should have disappeared into the high ceiling of Blackwell Hall. It did not. Everyone heard it. Marissa Monroe stared at Harper's hand as if the contract had betrayed her personally. The silver crescent beneath Harper's sleeve pulsed once. Then the lower vault answered. The floor trembled. Not violently. Worse. Knowingly. A deep vibration passed through the stones, rolling under Harper's feet, under Rowan's boots, under the table where the contract lay exposed. Candles bent toward the floor. The black carriage horses outside screamed once before the guards quieted them. Avery clutched Marissa's arm. Mother, what is happening? Marissa did not answer. Her eyes were fixed on the locket at Harper's throat. For the first time in Harper's memory, her stepmother looked afraid without deciding how that fear should appear. Elder Hale stepped forward slowly. The vault recognizes her blood. Harper looked at him. What does that mean? The old man's face tightened. It means the curse knows the difference between a bride delivered by contract and a healer standing by choice. Standing by choice. The words found Harper before she was ready for them. Yesterday, she had been sent. Delivered. Substituted. Useful. Now the castle itself was making a distinction no one in Monroe House ever had. Marissa recovered just enough to speak. This is absurd. Harper is not trained. She knows nothing of healing, nothing of court law, nothing of what a Luna must be. Rowan's voice was quiet. Neither did your daughter know how to die in her place. Avery flinched as if struck. Harper looked at her then. Really looked. For the first time since the carriage, she saw not only the sister who had been saved by her sacrifice, but the girl Marissa had shaped to believe being protected meant someone else should be offered instead. Avery's lips trembled. I didn't know about your mother. Harper believed that. It did not absolve her, but it changed the shape of the wound. Marissa turned sharply. Avery, be silent. No, Avery whispered. The hall stilled. Avery's hand fell away from her mother's sleeve. Her face was pale, frightened, but something in her eyes had begun to break open. You said Harper would only stay until the agreement was corrected, Avery said. You said she was stronger than me, that she would manage. Harper almost closed her eyes. Manage. Another soft word for survive what no one else wanted to face. Marissa's expression hardened. I saved you. You traded her. Silence. There it was. The truth finally spoken by the daughter Marissa had loved enough to corrupt. The floor trembled again. This time, the contract lifted at the edges though no wind moved through the hall. The black seal cracked wider. Ink began to bleed backward across the page, pulling Harper's name away from the scraped place where Avery's had once been. Elder Hale drew in a sharp breath. It is rejecting the substitution. Marissa stepped forward. No, Rowan moved beside Harper. Not in front. Beside. His nearness was a wall he did not force her behind. Marissa reached for the contract. That agreement belongs to Monroe House. Harper placed her hand fully over the paper. The crescent mark flared bright through her sleeve. No, she said. The word was calm. Final. It belonged to you when you thought I had no value. Marissa froze. Harper's voice did not rise. You do not get to reclaim me because you were wrong. The hall went silent. Avery lowered her head, tears slipping soundlessly down her face. Marissa's mouth opened, then closed. No answer. None that would survive the room. The contract blackened beneath Harper's palm. Not fire. Not ash. Just old magic releasing a lie it no longer had reason to hold. When Harper lifted her hand, the paper was blank. The Monroe name was gone. So was Blackwell's claim. Only a faint silver crescent remained where her name had been. Elder Hale bowed his head. The contract is void. Marissa staggered back half a step. For a heartbeat, Harper felt nothing. Then the emptiness arrived. Huge, quiet, terrifying. She was no longer sent, no longer promised, no longer bound by ink, fear, or the usefulness someone else had assigned to her. She was free, and freedom felt, at first, like standing at the edge of a road with no carriage waiting. Rowan looked at her, not touching, not asking too quickly. What do you want? He said. No one had asked her that yesterday. No one had asked her that in years. Harper looked toward the open doors, where rain still fell beyond the black carriage. Then toward the northern tower. Then down, beneath the floor, where the vault waited like a wound that had finally found the person who could hear it. Her hand closed around her mother's locket. I want the truth, she said. The lower vault answered again. This time, the sound was not pain. It was opening. The lower vault opened without a key. That was what every person in Blackwell Hall would remember. Not Marissa Monroe standing speechless beside the blank contract. Not Avery crying silently near the table. Not even Alpha King Rowan Blackwell, whose curse had trembled beneath his skin the moment Harper Ellis spoke the word truth. They remembered the sound. Stone moving under stone. A deep, ancient surrender beneath the floor, as if the castle had been holding its breath for generations and had finally found someone it trusted enough to exhale. The stairs appeared behind the old council arch. No servant had opened them. No guard had pulled a lever. One moment the wall was solid black stone. The next, it had split into a narrow passage descending into blue darkness. Elder Hale went still. Rowan's face tightened. Harper looked at them both. You knew it was there. Yes, Rowan said. You never went down? His answer came after a pause. I was told the vault answered only to the curse. Harper looked toward the opening. The locket at her throat warmed softly now. Not burning. Not warning. Calling. Maybe they lied about what it was answering. No one replied. Because everyone in that hall had begun to understand how much of Blackwell Castle had been built on names chosen by frightened men. Curse, monster, weapon, bride, useful. Harper stepped toward the stairs. Rowan moved with her, beside her, still. But when she reached the first step, she stopped and looked at him. I need to go first. His jaw tightened once. The old Rowan might have commanded. The cursed king might have blocked the way. The man before her only lowered his head. Then I will follow when you allow it. That should not have hurt. It did. Because permission was so small. And so rare. Harper descended alone. The air grew colder with each step. Blue light pulsed from veins of moonstone buried in the walls. The stone beneath her bare hand was damp, almost warm in places, like skin after fever. Behind her, the hall remained silent. Even Marissa did not speak. At the bottom of the stairs, Harper found no monster. No chain darkness. No weapon waiting to be claimed. Only a round chamber beneath the castle, its floor carved with silver crescents and old healer marks. At the center stood a stone basin filled with water black as night. Above it, suspended in the air by thin strands of silver light, was a woman's necklace. Not Harper's locket. Another one. Older. Broken. Harper knew it before anyone told her. Her mother's. The chamber blurred. For the first time since her birthday began, tears came. Quiet. Uninvited. She reached toward the broken necklace, but stopped before touching it. A memory rose from the water. Evelyn Ellis standing in this chamber years ago, younger, frightened, beautiful in the tired way mothers become when they have spent too long protecting children from truths with teeth. Rowan's father stood before her. Elder men behind him, silver chains in their hands. A curse beneath the stone, restless and hungry. Evelyn's voice filled the vault. Not a sound. As truth. A moon healer cannot destroy pain by being ordered to touch it. Healing is not obedience. It is choice. The vision shifted. Evelyn refusing. Evelyn hiding part of her bloodline in a locket. Evelyn sending her daughter away from Blackwell Records. Evelyn whispering one final promise into silver. When she is old enough to choose, the vault will open. The memory vanished. Harper stood shaking before the black water. Rowan had come down the stairs, but he stopped at the chamber entrance, exactly where he had promised to wait. He saw her tears. He did not rush toward them. That was mercy. Harper turned back to the basin. The silver crescent on her wrist brightened. The cuff still locked around Rowan's left wrist cracked once beneath its black cloth. He inhaled sharply. Harper looked at him. Not as the cursed king. Not as the man she had been sent to marry. As someone else who had been placed inside a story written by people who wanted pain to serve them. The curse was never yours alone, she said. Rowan's voice was rough. What is it? A wound. The words settled into the vault. The black water trembled. Harper stepped closer and placed her mother's locket into the basin. Light spread through the water. Not violently. Gently. The way dawn enters a room that has forgotten windows. The silver cuff on Rowan's wrist opened and fell to the stone. No roar followed. No darkness lunged. No monster broke free. Only Rowan's breath. One inhale. Then another. Unchained. Elder Hale appeared behind him and covered his mouth with one shaking hand. Above them, in the hall, Marissa made a small sound. Harper turned. Her stepmother stood at the top of the stairs, pale and stripped of every performance. Avery stood behind her, crying openly now. Marissa looked at the broken necklace, then at Harper. For the first time, she had no useful word left. Harper walked past Rowan and climbed the stairs slowly. The hall parted for her. Marissa whispered, Harper. Harper stopped. Not because the voice had power, because it no longer did. Marissa swallowed. I did what I thought was necessary. Harper looked at her for one long, quiet second. No, she said. You did what was easier than loving me. Silence. Final. Marissa flinched as if the words had struck skin. Harper did not apologize. She turned to Avery. Her stepsister's voice broke. I'm sorry. Harper believed her. That did not heal it. Then become someone who never lets another girl take your place in fear, Harper said. Avery nodded, crying harder. Rowan came to stand beside Harper at the edge of the hall. No chains. No silver. Still dangerous. But no longer abandoned inside his own suffering. The servants of Blackwell Castle lowered themselves to one knee. Not for a bride. Not for a contract. For the girl who had entered as the daughter they could afford to lose and opened the door no king had been able to command. Rowan looked at her. His voice was low. You are free now. Harper touched the locket at her throat. It was cool for the first time. Yes, she said. He did not ask her to stay. That was why she looked back at him. Outside, the black carriage waited in the rain, ready to carry Marissa and Avery away. Behind Harper, the lower vault glowed softly, no longer a prison beneath the castle, but a wound finally allowed to become a room. Harper took one breath, then another. I will stay tonight, she said. Not as your bride. Not as their substitute. Not because the curse chose me. Rowan waited. Harper lifted her chin. I will stay because I choose to understand what my mother protected. Rowan bowed his head. Not deeply. Enough. And when morning light finally crossed the open doors of Blackwell Castle, Harper Ellis stood in it without a contract, without a family ring, without anyone's claim on her name. The cursed Alpha King did not touch her. The castle did not swallow her. And the girl sent instead became the first person in generations to leave the choice in her own hands.